Here we go. How's her sound? Can you say something, Miss Sabina? Okay. I need you to come in a little bit closer.
So I'm gonna have her microphone already, and I can gauge the sound.
Okay.
How's this? Can you hear me better?
She was louder earlier.
You were louder earlier.
One.
Oh, I didn't touch anything.
Hey everyone, it is Wednesday. You're listening to 97.5 FM KDEE. I am Agent Key and we are selling Sacramento. On today's show, we are talking about building a better infrastructure of housing for America. And on the show today, I have with me Miss Abina Briscoe. And before I get into the details about who she is and how we are going to have this conversation on this subject matter today, I want to let you all know that on July 20th, yesterday, the Committee on Financial Services held a full hearing entitled Building Back a Better, More Equitable Housing Infrastructure for America, subtitle Oversight of the Department of Housing and Urban Development. I want to start just by pointing out the title of their hearing, Building Back a Better, More Equitable Housing Infrastructure for America. When did we ever have a better, more equitable housing infrastructure to be building it back? The title in and of itself threw me and interested me to tune in. It started at 7 a.m. our time. So I put it on my calendar and tuned in. And the full committee, they convened with, and I should say, testifying at the hearing was the Honorable Marcia Fudge, who is now the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And the chair of that committee is Maxine Waters. I don't know if you've ever tuned into these hearings, these committee hearings, but they are publicly publicized and broadcast. Anyone can tune in. And with the invention of live stream, we can see it in real time. A little background about Marcia Fudge, the Honorable Marcia Fudge. On March 10th of this year, she was sworn in as the 18th Secretary of the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. Prior to serving as the Secretary of HUD, Secretary Fudge served as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives for Ohio's 11th District from 2008 to 2021. She was also mayor of Warrensville Heights, Ohio, from 2000 to 2008. In the months that she was confirmed, HUD has worked to respond to increases in housing instability and homelessness caused by the coronavirus pandemic. They've proposed new investments in our nation's housing infrastructure as part of President Biden's Build Back Better plan, and they've rolled back actions that the Trump administration took to undermine the Fair Housing Act. So I want to start today's show with the introduction of the hearing featuring Maxine Waters.
Building Back a Better, More Equitable Housing Infrastructure for America. Oversight of the Department of Housing and Urban Development. First of all, a happy good morning, Secretary Fudge. I'm so delighted to have you with us today to discuss the work that the Biden administration is doing to build a more fair, equitable, and accessible housing infrastructure in this country. I want to begin by applauding you and the Biden administration for treating our housing crisis with the urgency and seriousness it deserves. The Trump administration made it crystal clear that it didn't appreciate the magnitude of our nation's housing crisis by repeatedly proposing deep budget cuts to HUD programs and taking action to undermine our fair housing laws. The Trump administration showed a complete disregard for low and moderate income families, people of color, the LGBTQ plus community, and immigrants. It's only because of Democrats in Congress that HUD's budget was not decimated during Trump's presidency. Because elections matter, President Biden and HUD have now begun to reverse Trump's anti-fair housing rules. Democrats on this committee also remain laser-focused on ensuring that eligible families receive the housing assistance available to them through the CARES Act, the December Relief Package, the American Rescue Plan, and other coronavirus relief legislation. And so we must remember, however, that we're not just building back our economy from the pandemic and Donald Trump's disastrous housing policies. We're building back better, and that's my focus for today's hearing. Key to building back better and more equitably is understanding that housing is infrastructure. For the first time in a generation, we have a real opportunity to fix structural problems in our housing system and reverse decades of disinvestment in low-income communities and communities of color. So last week, I and several members of this committee introduced a legislative package of 3 bills to do just that. One is first, the Housing is Infrastructure Act. Second is the Ending Homelessness Act. And the third is the Down Payment Toward Equity Act that would help access to address the racial gap and home ownership gaps by providing $100 billion toward down payment and other financial assistance for first-generation home buyers. We must make housing a top priority. These generational investments will increase home ownership, provide a permanent housing safety structure, and end homelessness in this country once and for all. So, Secretary Fudge, I know you're the right person to take advantage of this moment. Thank you so much for your leadership on this absolutely critical issue. I look forward to your testimony today.
And before we go any further with that, I want to dive right into the introduction of Ms. Sabina Briscoe, let you know who she is before we start talking about this. You guys stay tuned. They revealed some things that are coming down the pipeline, and you all need to know about this. This is a part of when we voted for Biden. And I got to say this. I often have to let people know I'm not a Democrat and I am not a Republican. I'm registered as an independent. I vote for people who are for me and the things that I am trying to do, the things that I'm trying to pursue. I don't lean left. I don't lean right. I lean Keisha. And so I'm looking at this entire dialogue that happened from the perspective of how is it going to benefit me, what I'm doing, and those around me. And oftentimes, because I am a woman, because I am a Black woman, many of those things have to do with my community and me being and Black people and women. So those are the things that interest me most. Those are the things that I am most passionate about. So it's not a race thing. Just let's be very clear about that. It's about equity. So I want to introduce Ms. Sabina Briscoe, who's a native of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She received a bachelor's in political science from Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina, a master's of public administration and finance management from Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta, Georgia. And she is this woman, wow. And she is currently working on she is a doctoral candidate. Let me rephrase that, a doctoral candidate for a PhD in psychology, integrating technology, psychology, and learning at Grand Canyon University. She's not a stranger to building back better communities, I might add. Her expertise is dedicated to improving the quality of life in the African American community through political engagement and economic development. As a matter of fact, I met Ms. Sabina through the California Black Women's Collective. And that is a tough group. If you've never heard of them, they're fairly new, fairly assembled. But if you Google, I think the website is up and running now, right?
Yes, it is.
And so if you Google California Black Women's Collective and you're interested in seeing what the group is doing, it's some of the top leaders at the table in politics and activism and leadership and in business who are part of this group. And they're making huge changes for the state of California and throughout. And she was instrumental in creating homeowners through mortgage lending, home buying education, and building acceptable credit. She also facilitated the creation of public-private partnerships by joining developers with community development corporations, CDCs, to build shopping centers and affordable housing, working with city agencies in Philadelphia to build handicapped accessible housing. And I want to add this as well. She currently resides in San Diego, everyone. She's continuing her work to improve the quality of life in the African American community. And Abina continues to create homeowners through mortgage lending activities and education. She builds leaders in the community by serving as vice chair of Black Women's Institute for Leadership Development and serving on the board of Black Americans Political Association of California in San Diego. Also, we know it as BAPAC. So I am pleased to have her, what I call, is it Monday morning quarterback? Monday morning quarterbacking this with me. Miss Abina, say hello to everyone.
Hello, thank you, Key, for inviting me. We're doing some very important work when we're building back better communities, and I hope that I can be instrumental in getting information out and assisting you in what you're trying to do.
Awesome, awesome. And we're working on getting your volume up a little bit higher there. And but I'm just excited to have you. So just in the opening, and I know that you watched it as well, let's just get some general feedback before we jump into the two pieces that jumped out the most to me, the three pieces.
Okay, so in a summary, a high-level overview, I didn't watch the entire hearing, but I was up at 7 a.m. watching it as you were. And I was really excited about Marcia Fudge, the Honorable Marcia Fudge, and her progressiveness in how she's pursuing and engaging HUD in looking at some of the programs that have went dormant through the last 4 years. And even prior to that, when our former President Obama, he put some life into some of the programs, it went dormant. She's going to not only regenerate those, but she's going to lift them up. And I'm excited that we are going to be here to help provide guidance and some policy initiatives that we can assist her as we try and breathe some life into home ownership, which is a very basic key in building back better communities.
Good, thank you. And everyone, a majority of the individuals who were there seemed very excited to have her in that position. And she seemed to be able to hold her own. There was something that happened right away and kept happening throughout the session. And I'm going to play a little piece of it right now.
Recognize the ranking member of the committee, the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry, for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for holding today's hearing. Secretary Fudge, welcome. Nice to see you in your first appearance before Congress on that side of the table. It has a different perspective.
I thought I had a little bit more. That should not have cut off like that. Oh, let me see what happened. Oh, fudge. No pun intended. So let me just tell everybody what happened. There was a question that kept being asked. Somebody was missing from that session.
Oh, yes.
Who was
the Secretary of the Treasurer, Secretary Yellen.
Secretary? Go ahead.
They kept trying to make her responsible for what Secretary Yellen is responsible for. And I think she was very strategic and very I'm trying to think of a nice way to put it. She politely redirected them back to Secretary Yellen's role versus her role. I think what Honorable Marcia Fudge was doing is letting them know she understands what her role is, and she wants them to know that she understands her role. I remember they consistently tried to make her responsible for local zoning in the neighborhoods, and how she can affect regulation to enforce some of the housing that HUD has, like the public housing that they have. And she
Mhm.
kept trying to tell them that she is not responsible for any zoning, local zoning regulations, but they kept going in that direction, because it's almost like if they say it long enough, it's going to be so.
Right.
But we have to make sure that we redirect responsibilities to where they belong. Local zoning is done through your local officials that you put in place and who they appoint.
And and I think that they understood that. I think what they were doing was wielding that moment, that space, that platform that they had to make the point that they were trying to make. So I want to make the point that they were trying to make, but to your point and to Honorable Fudge's point,
Mhm.
she was not responsible for what they were talking about. But here is the point that they were trying to make. They are accusing the Democrats of mismanaging emergency rental assistance funding. That is what that was about. So the top Republican, and that's who you saw, and I apologize for not getting all of that footage. The top Republican on the House Financial Services Committee is Patrick McHenry. He led the committee Republicans in introducing the Renter Protection Act. So during this time, yesterday, he said, hey, I introduced this act. We've not heard anything about it yet. This money has been mismanaged. Why isn't Janet Yellen here right now to take these questions and tell us what's going on? So let me explain to you a little bit about what the Renters Protection Act is. It's written to reform and simplify what the Republicans are calling two needlessly complicated emergency rental assistance programs by consolidating them into one unified program with one set of rules. So this is what the bill does. It transfers all remaining March program funds, which they're saying the Treasury has still failed to allocate to cities and states, transferring all of that money by December 2020, and requires the Treasury to disperse the funds within 30 days. It requires that cities and states with any unused ERA money after July 1st use those funds exclusively to pay off the back rent debts of COVID-impacted eligible households, as Congress originally intended. And it reinstates the original December 31st, 2021 deadline for cities and states to distribute all ERA funds to COVID-impacted eligible households to make sure this assistance immediately benefits individuals with back rent due to the pandemic. Now, on its face, it sounds, well, yeah, right? Any thoughts on that?
Well, remember when they kept going after Fudge about Secretary Yellen and the disbursement of the funds. Remember, she said the monies have already been dispersed. They
Mhm.
are now in the hands of those officials who should be getting them directly to the end users.
She said, and to your point, she said they are 100%
They are
gone from them.
100%
So
gone.
they now have no more control. We
Right.
need to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to dive into that just a little bit more, and then we're going to move on to a couple of acts that they talked about that I know you and I are super energized to hear about. You're
That's right.
listening to 97.5 FM KDEE. I am Agent Key, and we'll be right back.
Did you want to take phone calls?
No, we got a lot to get through. Oh, okay.
How's the voice coming over, Key?
It's still a little low, and I'm trying to see if
I'm
there's
trying to
something I
find
can do on my end.
I'm
I'm
just
wondering, are you on your laptop?
Yes, I am.
And this is what you normally use on Zoom calls and things?
Uh-huh. I haven't touched the sound. Let me go in here and see.
You turned it up on that end?
No, I turned you down.
Oh,
So now all the listeners have to do is just adjust their volume
listeners have to adjust their volume?
at home, yeah.
I don't want listeners adjusting their volume.
That's the only way to get a proper balance. Because as it is, I got her all the way up, and you'll hear a buzz after a while. That's why
I'm trying to
when
see
she's
if
talking,
there's-
I pull her up, then I pull her down when she's not.
See, my sound is on. I'm listening to my
Because
sound.
did you hear, when I played the videos, you see how loud they came
Right,
in?
I know.
Yeah, they came in really loud. Why is
Yeah.
mine not coming
Because
in?
it's turned all the way up
I
on
know.
my end.
That's where the buzz comes in, because your volume's on there. So I had to make a balance.
So I don't know what to touch. I don't know what to touch. I have a little button down here that says cam/mic.
No, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. I'm afraid of what that might do.
I know, right?
Because
I went into my computer sound and
it's up to.
Mhm.
Let's just leave it the way it is,
Yeah,
just
'cause
in
you got the
case.
balance. So
Yeah.
it's better to do that than
Yeah,
putting
he's-
up the volume.
Our engineer said we've got the balance. So,
So should I speak louder?
yes, how
There's
about that?
nobody in my room with me, so I can talk as loud.
There you go.
That's good.
Just
I feel like I'm yelling, Key. I can talk really, really loud.
well, use your outside voice.
What's up, brother?
Yes, sir. At home?
Jeff Beals is author of the book Self-Marketing Power.
I can use myself as a way to get more money to come in the door.
The show.
So I really believe the concept of a personal brand is a situation
On the show,
where
on the
a
radio?
professional makes sure that
Yes.
their name and their reputation is widely
On
known,
video?
widely respected, and that when someone thinks of whatever it is that you do for a living, the sound of your name appears in their ears and the picture of your
Because
face
I
appears in their mind.
use this
We invite you
mic,
to get our free
and
online
instead of using it
magazine.
for me, which is what I
Visit
should, I turn it to whoever's here so that people listening online can hear them better.
I'm Jennifer Kidd.
Oh, yeah.
This mic
Y'all
is supposed to be for me.
Y'all not plugging the audio into the board?
What are you?
The computer.
Oh, no. Because when we did it, we was having an issue with this thing right here. That's what we did first. And when we were, when you kept asking me what was going on, that's why we switched to using the mic. Because we used the audio first. And I don't know what they was going on, but it wasn't cool.
Hey everyone, we're back. You're listening to 97.5 FM KDEE, and today's discussion is on the committee hearing that took place yesterday. I have with me a guest, my special guest, Miss Abina Briscoe. We were talking about, and I'm thinking about, do I want to lean into that? Because that kind of became a place of a bone of discontentment for Maxine Waters. And I want to, if I got the right video piece, I want to play this to let you guys know. There were maybe 2, 3, 4 individuals that brought up Janet Yellen before Maxine Waters ended up saying this.
Question about Yellen as opposed to Secretary Fudge and HUD. No, I did not invite her to intrude on the first time that this secretary would appear before us. And I don't intend to treat women that way. And so, no, Yellen is not here. She'll be here when the quarterly time is due, and that is it.
And the
I will
minority
now-
looks very forward to that, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
The gentleman from New York, Mr. Meeks, who is the chair of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
And before we listen to what he has to say, she just put her foot down and she said, y'all gonna stop talking about Janet Yellen.
Right.
Did you hear her say that?
Absolutely. And I was glad that she said that because they were trying to divert the focus of the hearing and they were trying to interject some negativity or underhanded or less than transparent activity.
Mm-hmm. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because these are all tactics.
Yeah.
And these are things that we need to look at from a neutral lens. Because again, I'm not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican. But it was very clear that the items that they were referring to, first of all, the answers needed to come from Janet Yellen. this was not the Honorable Fudge's lane. That's not, I tell people that's not my lane.
Right.
You know, she would have been wrong to say that, but right to say it, you know, and she did say it in a way. That was not her responsibility. She couldn't answer to that. And then also the questions that she could answer, she let them know all of the funds that have been
Allocated.
that we're responsible for, they've been allocated. They are out there. And we don't have any control over how the states and local jurisdictions allocate those funds. We have to leave that in the control of the states and the local jurisdictions. And at one point, one of them even said, well, you can impose a guideline to streamline to make sure those funds get in faster. And then Maxine Waters made a point to say, you know, where were you guys back in March of 2020 when we were trying to get funds into everybody's hands? When we implemented the HEROES Act and then we gave more money to it, it took the Republicans until December to get on board with getting money into the hands of everyone. And now you want to say that money's not being expedited fast enough?
But you know what Secretary Fudge told them, as they kept alluding to the fact that what can you do to get the funds out there? She specifically said the checks have been written, distributed, and cashed. We have nothing else to do with that. It absolutely has to come from those local distribution communities, your cities, your counties, your states that get those typical users. And I think that was a point where we can get our community groups and agencies involved to begin to put pressure on them to get those funds out so that the rents can be caught up and we can preserve some people from being put out and being homeless.
Right, right. And so let's hear the rest of that video.
Madam Secretary, I'm delighted to see you and even more delighted with the job that you're already doing at HUD. You know, you have made increasing production and access to affordable housing a priority for HUD's budget, and you've identified our severe shortage of affordable housing as a barrier to the home purchasing process. And as you know, since the financial crisis, private investors have focused much on real estate because of high yields. However, what I'm concerned about is that the private investors can often outcompete potential first-time home buyers. Some cite cumbersome FHA paperwork as slowing down the process for traditional home buyers, as well as making the rehab loan process expensive. So my question is, can you consider or look at streamlining the FHA loan process to put first-time home buyers in a better position to compete with private firms in the home purchasing process?
Absolutely, and we're doing that now by looking at a number of things. One is, you know, HUD historically has not given a lot of small dollar loans. That's what people need to rehabilitate their homes. We are changing that. HUD has looked at credit in a way that we think has been unfair to persons of color or low-income or moderate home buyers, because we have weighted student debt differently than we have other debt. And so we have created an environment in which people primarily who carry student debt, Black people, brown people, poor people, and moderate income people. So we have decided to weight that differently to allow people to really be creditworthy at this stage. We've also, in conjunction with our chair, looked at down payment assistance. So we are doing a lot of the things that you're requesting, and I'm just really happy that you brought it up. Thank you so much.
I wanted to bring up the next one because it's important, home ownership, in my estimation, in closing the wealth gap, which has been a priority of mine and a priority of this committee. And as you've just correctly stated, your key component of achieving that is helping individuals build up equity through home ownership. Again, because of the price of homes skyrocketed, student borrowers, especially those of color, view home ownership as unattainable. And that's why, you know, I am so happy that you've already taken on how you calculate student loan debt in its underwriting process to better reflect what student borrowers actually pay monthly, which is not often the sticker price, which gives them an opportunity to become homeowners, build, you know, equity in their homes, and thereby closing the wealth gap. So that's so tremendously important. Maybe I should just ask you, can you just explain a little bit more how you're implementing that policy and your forecast of how impactful that change will be for student borrowers and especially those of color?
Well, think about it this way, if I can just give you a very quick example. Prior to our making the change, a person that makes about $50,000 a year and has about $75,000 worth of student debt could not be approved for a house that costs $225,000. They can now. That's the difference. So, and the other thing I think that's so important is the fact that we make an assumption that if you have a lot of student debt, reason you're. But I know when I went to school, my mother would have paid anything, every dime she had, to make sure I had a good education. And so it's not a matter of not being able to pay. We know most people who can afford an apartment can afford a home. The good thing is that HUD actually secures more than 50% of all first-time home buyers' mortgages. And it's something that comes within our shop, so we can make a difference.
Okay. Are you there, Key? Okay, so I'm not sure where Key is. I'm not sure if the connection has been lost. But I do know that one of the things that we're excited about and that we were looking at as a collective is how we can impact FHA in the way that they look at student loans and getting people into homes. So this is very exciting that they're looking at that and looking at how credit, how they review the credit for prospective purchasers. I'm not sure if I am online. And it looks as though this has been lost. I don't want to stop talking, but at the same time, I don't think we're online. Key? They were unpacking a lot of issues at the hearing um, yesterday. And the contention is getting funds to prospective home buyers, build, closing the wealth gap, as they said. And you can only do that because a lot of wealth is created and started through home ownership and the equity that is passed on. And I know one of the things that they said, if they run out of homes to save by way of rental with the rental funds, they were going to find another way to use those funds. Perhaps if we have to save some of the homes that may be lost through foreclosure that went into forbearance after COVID. They said they had some flexibility. It wasn't designated as as of yet, but there were things that they were going to look into. We're trying to retain home ownership in the community so that we don't lose what we already have and that we build on that and create new homeowners. Now, the whole purpose of trying to redo the student loans is because we have a whole generation of college graduates who are locked out of the home buying market because of the way they use student loans to qualify people to get into homes. And so, based on this new formula that they're coming up with and reworking how they look at the credit,
So
that
the process really begins with an amazing self-awareness, particularly of
Could you hear me, Avina?
I can hear you. Can you hear
You
me?
are a vet for sure, girl. You kept running the online show. God bless you.
purposely match with their script.
I didn't know if that could be heard or not, and I didn't want to let it.
Tara said she could still hear you. Thank you so much.
Oh,
I
okay.
interrupted you.
Yeah. And anyway, like I was saying, so
Oh, wait, hold on one moment. We're coming back from the break.
Okay.
We took a break so that we could fix the technological thing on this end.
Oh, okay.
So you were still going on the social media end and the radio end. We took a break.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. I said, I don't know if I'm being heard or not, but let me just talk anyway. So
We
that
are back, you all. I am dealing with a vet, Miss Avina Briscoe. We took a break on the radio side, and when I logged back on the computer, she was still talking to everybody that's watching on video, and they're still tuning in. So God bless you. She is a vet for sure. I appreciate you, my dear. And before we had that technical difficulty, we had just heard them talking about the plans that they have for housing and equity building through home ownership. So can you give us your thoughts on what you heard?
okay, I'm going. It's going to be like a brief repeat of what I was saying,
Sure.
but in terms of building the equity and retaining ownership, you remember when they were in the hearing, how they were saying that there may be funds left from the rental money that they may divert to help retain some of the homes that may be in foreclosure trouble as a result of COVID. So we're hoping
Mhm.
that we can redirect that and build equity. And by the mere fact that we're going to attempt to change how we look at student loans and change how we look at credit, we're going
Yes.
to put more people into more of our newly, we're going to put more of our newly millennials and Gen Zers into homes now where they can start beginning to build, where they can begin to build their wealth. And we
Now
need to,
that's something that we had actually talked about in our subcommittee through the California Black Women's Collective. You in particular brought that up, that they need to change how credit is looked at, because we know that credit is one of the biggest deterrents from individuals getting housing. And in particular, not just because we definitely can understand you not being qualified for a house if your credit is bad because you don't pay your bills. But when you are a person of color and you are pushed to go into college, or you want to go to college because you're the first generation college for, going to college, and as soon as your feet touch the campus ground, they're throwing $20,000-$30,000 at you
Mhm.
in student loans.
Yeah.
And who doesn't take that? Because we know that with that $20,000-$30,000, that's also going to put an immediate $1,500, $2,000 in our pockets
Yeah.
that we didn't have before. It's going to pay for school. We've got money to buy books and so on and so forth, not realizing the collected debt that's building over time. And then by the time you get out of college, if you get out, because then there are those that don't finish college because the debt burden is so much. So to hear them talk about restructuring the FHA loan to be kinder to those individuals who have student loans, how did you feel about that? What were your thoughts?
Well, I feel great about that. I still don't think they're going far enough. And here's why I say that. I say that because there was a time, and I know it's old school, it was old school, but a lot of old school stuff is coming back around because it's applicable now.
Right.
There was a time, if your student loans were in deferment for a year, they weren't even considered in your debt to income ratio.
Right.
So it didn't impact your ability to purchase a home. So I understand why now they're wanting to put some of it in there, because they're saying at some point those loans are going to become due, and hint hint, you may default on your loan now, on your mortgage now, because you didn't factor in any of that. So I understand why they want to factor some of it in, but they still need to be gracious. There was a time when FHA and VA was the most lenient on student loans, and now they're the toughest ones on student
Mm-hmm.
loans. Conventional is a little better because conventional will allow you to use your income-based rate repayment plans.
Right.
I'm glad to see them do that, and we really need to lean in very hard on these credit bureaus and the algorithms that Fannie and Freddie and Ginny adopt because the credit algorithms that are used it can change. Let me give you an example. It can change how much happens on a 30-day late payment. So you can have they can have algorithms where they assign, you know how you have your FICO scores and your credit scores. So they can assign a certain value to those where with a you get hit harder if the algorithms say so for a 30-day late. And then they have some algorithms where they don't sign as tough a value. But that's not something that I'll see or you can see up front. It's in the system and how they calculate and move that through. And
So it sounds like what you're saying, just the idea that they have the ability to adjust those algorithms
yeah,
can make the playing field harder for some people.
yeah, but Fannie and Freddie, like when we run those automatic approvals, those
Mm-hmm.
we call
The
them
deal.
DUs and
Mm-hmm.
LPs,
That's right. Mm-hmm.
and the lenders decide which credit algorithms they're going to go with. And then that's what they assign to Fannie and Freddie when they run those reports.
So are
So
you saying the individual lenders get to decide which algorithm they're going to use, or who gets to make that decision?
I don't want to say that they will make that decision because I'm not quite sure yet. But I'm just going on an experience that I had when I was working with one and the particular lender that I was working with at that time. And I understood that there was a, I'm trying to think of what do they call it? That they rate these credit reports. Let's say this is credit report. This is credit an analytics 5, credit analytics 6. And so they should have done away with credit analytics 5, and now they should have integrated credit analytics 6, which had a better value system to it that would approve more and that would say 2 times 30 days late won't stop you versus 1 times 30-day later stop. And when my loan wasn't approved because of that, and I called them and I said, well, you're using the wrong credit report. They changed it. They changed the credit analytic tool, and then it was approved. So I'm not sure where and how that decision is made. That's something that should be more uniform. I just think
Right.
we should have some uniformity on who uses it and how it's used
Well,
to
we've
make.
got that on our California Women's Collective list of things to attack.
Yes,
So
we do.
we have a question from Ms. Tara. She said, when will this new law go into effect, and how can a new home buyer know if their student loan debt is not being looked at negatively now as a result of the new law?
Well, that depends a lot on your loan officer and your lender, and I would lean in on them because everybody should be following the same rule. The one thing about FHA, they have a they have a lull period, and then where the lenders can jump on it a little bit, and then there's one where it has to be applied, and you can't sell loans to FHA if you're not applying the rules. And so if you're a particular loan officer, you might want to ask them how much are they giving you for a monthly payment to give you some kind of idea whether or not they're using the correct rules.
So would the potential buyer just ask the mortgage lender, the loan officer, are you familiar with the updated FHA rules as it pertains to student loan servicing? Could they just out and wrap?
I would ask them. I would ask them to see what they say. They
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't have to, but I would ask them.
Mm-hmm. I
Oh,
know that oftentimes lenders don't get, well, how should I say this? Sometimes people just don't do their homework, no matter what
that's true.
industry you're in.
That's
And
true.
so I would say to anyone listening, if you are looking to buy a home and you're working with a lender, do the research yourself, pull it up and share it with the lender that you're working with. It may not be that they, are a bad lender. They could be a good lender that just doesn't know that the knowledge exists. And that's why the knowledge is out there. Pass it on to them and let them know that this exists, that it's happening, that it's coming down the tunnel. I often share across the board with all of when one of my lender partners tells me something, I share that information with all of my lender partners. Did you know? Did you know this? Because they're working with all of my clients. I want them all to know all the ins and outs, all the tips and tricks, access to all of the resources available to help all of my clients. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would certainly ask them. It's not like you're challenging their authority or their knowledge of the industry. Just say, I'm just double checking. I just want to make sure I'm getting every opportunity afforded me by just looking into that. I would not be shy about asking them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Ms. Tara said, would this new law also be applicable to current homeowners who want to refinance?
Yes. And the reason, if you're refinancing and you're doing an FHA loan now, this is not conventional. Conventional is already taking income-based repayment plans, but this is only strictly related to FHA, not VA. So if you're refinancing a loan, remember now you're closing out your old loan and you're opening up a new loan. So the new loan is going to be the rules and the new laws will be applicable to the new loan.
And I like to remind people, when you refinance, you reset the clock. The
Right.
30 years starts all over. If you're in a 30-year fixed, unless you're refinancing into a 15-year, then the 15-year starts. So oftentimes when someone closes escrow, a buyer closes escrow, they say, when should I refinance? Especially if they've got MI, mortgage insurance. How soon should I look at refinance? As soon as possible. Don't wait 5-10 years. Check every year to see if you've got enough equity to refinance out of that mortgage insurance. You don't want to get 5-10 years into paying your mortgage and then refinance for the purpose of refinancing out of mortgage insurance, because at the beginning of your loan, you are mainly paying off interest. Unless you're paying additional money towards the principal, paying down the principal, the bulk of your mortgage payment is going towards the interest. So when you reset that clock, guess what you're going to start paying all over again?
You're going to pay interest that used to be written off on your tax returns that has been somewhat diluted from the new tax laws, but hopefully they will regain that. But also you can, some lenders will allow you to refinance for 15, 20, 25 years, so you don't have to start the 30 years all over again. But mortgage insurance, FHA mortgage insurance does not run like conventional mortgage insurance. And mortgage insurance is going to be the difference between the value of your home. Well, actually, if you're trying to refinance to get out of MI, they're going to go for the purchase price that you paid for it versus the balance that you owe. And it needs to be 78%. I mean, so you're going to have to pay it down to do that. And even though the property is going to be going up in value and you want to take advantage of that equity, some of them say, look, and that's a moving target how people apply that. But most times when they become real sticklers, they say we're going by the sale price of the house and the current balance on your mortgage. And if it's 78% in between there, then you can get that reduced or removed.
You're making me think of
Then it's different.
You're making me think of another point that I let my clients know, which is to ask 2 or 3 loan professionals the same question. And if you get the same answer 2 or 3 different times, chances are that's the right information. If you get 2 or 3 different answers, keep on asking until you get a consistent right answer, for sure. So there was something else that happened. There were so many issues that were brought up. Let me just go down the list and talk about, just share really quickly. Can I find my list of the bills that were brought up that they are proposing? So the Housing is Infrastructure Act of 2021, Maxine Waters, it's a bill to authorize over $600 billion in new funding for America's housing infrastructure. The Down Payment Towards Equity Act of 2021, also by Maxine Waters, is a bill to address the legacy of discrimination in our housing markets by providing down payment and other financial assistance, along with housing counseling requirements to expand access to sustainable homeownership and reduce barriers to entry for credit-worthy, lower wealth borrowers. The Ending Homelessness Act of 2021 is a bill establishing a universal voucher program, ban housing discrimination based on source of income and veteran status, and provide supplemental emergency funding to address the homelessness crisis in the United States. Then we have the Affordable Housing Preservation Act of 2021 by Omar. It's a bill to establish a demonstration program to support zero equity and limited equity cooperative developments. That was HR 2851. HR 3111 is the Grand Family Housing Act of 2021, and this is McGovern and Presley. It's a bill to provide supportive services to households headed by grandparents. Then we have the Fair Chance at Housing Act, and this is is that how you pronounce her name? Ocasio-Cortez? Ocasio-Cortez?
Yes.
It's a discussion draft to reform the eviction and screening policies for federal housing assistance. Then we have HR 3555, which is the Voters on the Move Registration Act by Williams and Waters. It's a bill to require public housing agencies, owners of federally assisted housing, and lenders of federally backed mortgages to provide tenants and borrowers with voter registration information upon applying for a mortgage loan or receiving federal rental assistance. We then have HR 4237, which is the Tenant Empowerment Act by Presley, Tlaib, and Waters. It's a bill to protect and empower residents of certain federally assisted rental housing to hold HUD and providers accountable for poor housing conditions and improve the quality of their homes. We then have HR 3279, which is the HUD Inspection Oversight Act of 2021 by Lawson. It's a bill to direct HUD to increase transparency and strengthen enforcement of the inspection process for properties supported by project-based rental assistance that fail to come into compliance with federal housing laws. And then we have the HR 2965, the Naomi Schwartz Safe Parking Program Act of 2021 by Carbajal. This is a bill to provide grants to local governments to establish safe parking programs. I want to stop with that one because we have a new level of homelessness with people living out of their cars. I am privy to a number of individuals who have a 9-to-5 job and are living in their cars. And we all may know someone or know of someone. You may know someone who's living in their car and you don't know that they're living out of their car. Can we just say that? I want to tell you what the Carbajal Naomi Schwartz Safe Parking Program Act does. It establishes 5-year grants through the Department of Housing and Urban Development for cities and local governments to apply for up to $5 million to establish or expand existing safe parking programs. The grants may be used to establish and operate safe parking programs, provide permanent rehousing assistance to the families using the safe parking program, employ staff who will maintain the safety and health of all participants, and establish and maintain the operation of hygiene facilities and restrooms for homeless persons. Also, maintain the vehicles of homeless persons using a safe parking program and provide gas for such persons to use their vehicles to drive to places that will help them obtain or maintain housing. And so that, when I saw that, I said, wow, they're trying to cover all their bases. This is pretty exciting.
Well, we have some of those safe parking lots here in San Diego.
This is where it started. It started in San Diego.
Okay, and that's good. But here's a point, because as we're nearing the end of your time, here's a point that your listeners need to hear. All of these programs, they can be effective, and HUD sends the money to your local communities. It sends money to your local governments, your county governments, your city governments. You know, you even have community development groups that can write proposals to get some money, to get the money and use it to disperse and use. You have entrepreneurs. This is where my economic development hat come on. You know, they have communities set up. You have, if you have a business, you can take your business and you can look and see how you can enter into a contract with the federal government to take a charge of some of these programs and to disperse them if that's what you choose to do. There are a lot of opportunities that we do not take advantage of. And you should be able to do that through any of your community groups. Form one if you have to, and look, you can find a lot of this information online, through
Right.
General Services Administration, through HUD. They have these private independent contracting. You don't have to be a big business. You can be a small business, uh, and implement some of these programs and request some of those funds.
We are almost out of time, and I want to just, and thank you for sharing that information. I want to just quickly rattle off the remaining three or the remaining four bills that were talked about. The Federal Financing Bank Risk Sharing Act of 2021, which is a draft bill to require the continuation of FHA Affordable Rental Housing Financing Partnership with Federal Financing Bank. The Manufactured Housing Tenants Bill of Rights, a bill established to set minimum standards for manufactured housing tenants. The Manufactured Housing Community Preservation Act of 2021, which will help local entities purchase and maintain manufactured housing communities through awards of up to $1 million. So that sounds like they're looking into other housing alternatives for people. And actually, there's a couple more. The Preventing Foreclosures on Seniors Act. This one is huge. It's a bill to revise the FHA program for home equity conversion mortgages to add safeguards to prevent the displacement of elderly homeowners and their spouses. And then the last one, which is one that's near and dear to my heart that I don't have time to get into, but hopefully one day we will, Improving Federal Oversight of PACE Financing Act, and that's by Sherman. It's a bill to require property-assessed clean energy financiers to receive the consent of mortgage holders before providing financing. And we'll get into the details of that one at another time. But Miss Abina Briscoe, thank you so much for being on the show today and helping me Monday quarterback that session.
Well, thank you for asking me. I was happy to do it. I really was.
Awesome. And thank you
I look
all
forward
for
to the work
tuning in.
that we're doing with the California Black Women's Collective. I know we're going to make some changes.
Me as well. And with the force that we have, the group that we have, oh my goodness. Watch out, California. Watch out, the United States. A change is a coming. You're listening to 97.5 FM KDEE. I am Agent Key. And remember, if you are doing what you were created to do, I will see you at the top.
Okay.
Thank you so much, my dear. Look, I'll see you at our next session.
Absolutely.
Have fun.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye, everybody.